Call the April 12th meeting of the Traffic and Parking Advisory Board meeting to order. Good afternoon and welcome. The Traffic and Parking Advisory Board reviews items of interest regarding parking and traffic items. We are an advisory board, and our favorable recommendation today will go before the Oshkosh Common Council. The council can either accept or reject any recommendation from this board. If you do not agree with our decision today, you can discuss the item with any council member. If the board does not recommend an item, a common council member may in fact sponsor a new ordinance regarding that same item. All items do require two readings before the common council. The first reading on today's business will take place on Tuesday, April 26th at 6 p.m., and you will be allowed to comment on the item at that time, though the council will take no action. On Tuesday, May 10th at 6 p.m., the item will be on a second reading at the Common Council, at which time the council will in fact take action. You will again be allowed to speak at that time. For this afternoon's meeting, I will read each agenda item, at which time if you'd like to speak, please step to the podium, give both your name and address for the record. I do ask that you keep your comments pertinent to the agenda item. The item will then come back to this board for discussion and action. Please call roll for the assurance of a quorum.
Christensen.
Here.
Jazinski.
Here.
Wanschneider.
Here.
Staple.
Here.
And Becker.
Here. First item on today's agenda is public comment. Seeing no members of the public present, if it's all the same to the rest of the board, we'll move right then to approval of minutes.
So moved. Second.
Anyone with any comments, questions, additions, or deletions to the minutes from the prior meeting? Again, seeing none, I will ask for roll be called on approval of minutes.
Christensen.
Aye.
Jazinski.
Aye.
Wanschneider.
Aye.
Staple.
Aye.
Becker.
Aye. Which then brings us to old business, and I don't believe there is any, Mr. Collins?
Nope, it was just a follow-up based on our training at the last meeting. I know some of the boards asked for follow-up, what happened with items from the previous meeting. So the previous meeting, we discussed the no parking requests on West 6th Avenue, and that'll have the second reading tonight since there were 5 weeks in between 5 weeks last month, so there was an extra week between council meetings. So that'll be approved tonight, assuming nothing comes up. So that's where we're at with that item.
Okay. Which then brings us to new business, the first item being request to say Pledge of Allegiance at the start of each of these board meetings.
And that was from
Me.
Mr. Becker had requested that, so on the agenda.
Is that a motion?
That is in fact a motion. I move that we move forward with that particular item.
I'd second that.
Any discussion on the item?
Where's our flag? We'll need a
The flag resides at the far end of the room,
up there, right?
Bill. I've long thought about bringing this forward, and the last meeting, it just seemed to be a good idea. I think, again, for any other board chairs that happen to be listening, or any other board members of other boards are watching, I would encourage you to do the same. I think it's the proper thing to do. So, that being said, unless someone else has a comment, I'm going to ask that the roll be called on the request to say the pledge at the beginning of each of these meetings. Seeing none, call the roll.
Christensen.
Aye.
Jazinski.
Aye.
Wanschneider.
Aye.
Staple.
Aye.
Becker.
Aye. And with that, I'm going to depart from the agenda and ask that we actually all rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Jim.
Sorry.
Oh, give us a moment.
There.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's not quite as serious.
Okay.
Which then brings us to the review of the 2021 crash report and top 10 crash intersections. Mr. Collins.
So each year we try to take a look at a crash report, and we've kind of tried to simplify it over the years. So And generally what the goal is just to look at the crash trends in general and then to look at the top 10 intersections and see if there's things we can do to mitigate those crashes. So you have my report in your packets. First of all, the East Central started putting together these maps, which has been very helpful, and on their website they actually have an interactive tool where you can look at crashes in different locations throughout Winnebago County, which is pulled from a state website that's run by the University of Wisconsin Traffic Operations Lab. So that's kind of the context. But looking at the total number of crashes, and we exclude deer, in 2021, at intersections there were 1,151. So up a little bit from 2020 where there was 1,009, but still down from the previous years. Obviously the last year or two has been an anomaly due to the COVID. There was a lot less traffic in 2020. In 2021, came back a little bit, but still, there's still the effects of some of the COVID going into 2021. So the crash history, I guess, isn't unexpected. It has been pretty steady, I would say. The thing that has changed is since we've introduced roundabouts, the number of injuries and fatalities has gone down most years. And we saw a dip in that in 2020, and then it went back up a little bit in 2021. But since the roundabouts were introduced in the city in 2012, that year we were at like 549 injuries, and now we've been running in, this year was 346, and that's been the last few years, even pre-COVID, we've been around the 350 mark. So that's the good news, is that it seems like the roundabouts have done what they were supposed to do, which was to decrease the number of injuries and the severity of crashes. So that's a good thing. And then also the improved vehicle safety features, that also could be a contributing factor to the reduced injury rate. And then obviously we've done some city initiatives like road diets to try to help with those high crash intersections. And since we've done those, you'll notice that the higher crash intersections have gradually dwindled from that report. Then we looked at, this is, and that's this map, it's a little hard to see on here, but anyway, the number of crashes with bike or pedestrians, and what I look at here is if there's any trends for the blue being where there were bike crashes and the red pedestrians, and there really isn't a centralized area that would show concern. However, the number of crashes with bikes was 15 in 2021 and 7 with pedestrians, which was down from previous years, where the number with bikes in the mid-2000s was running anywhere from 15 up to 39, and the number with pedestrians was generally in the teens or 20s. So it was a good year, relatively speaking, for accidents involving bikes and pedestrians. And I think it's hard to say exactly what has led to that, but the city has invested heavily in pedestrian crossing infrastructure. We've had a number of rectangular, rapidly flashing beacons installed. We've installed overhead LED pedestrian crossing signs, along with some speed boards in the last few years. Those RFBs, which are the rectangular, rapidly flashing beacons, we did install some with the help of the county's Aging and Disability Resource Center at the roundabout at Washburn and 9th last year, and they are helping fund some at the roundabout at 9th and Keller this year. We've also done things like the updated Continental style crosswalk painting at mid-block crossings, and some of the higher volume crossings like the one at Congress Avenue, Arboretum, and Summit for the Wyowash crossing. Also, there have been an RFB installed on Algoma in the college area, as well as what we call a hawk system in front of Clo on High Avenue. Many other things have been done, but that's just some of the highlights. When Main Street was reconstructed, there were some bump outs to make it more pedestrian friendly. We've used pedestrian flags at the roundabouts where we don't have the flashers. And then we've done some bicycle and pedestrian safety days. The police department has a motorcycle unit where they focus on some pedestrian laws and educating and enforcing. So those are some of the preventive maintenance and some of the latest techniques that we've used. This last year, we did the safety improvements on Jackson Street, and that includes some additional crosswalks and some RFBs. So I'm hopeful that the reduced number of crashes involving the bikes and pedestrians are a result of some of those measures that we've taken in the last few years. This map shows the high crash intersections from the top 10 from 2021. And what we try to do is there's so much out there. We try to, I guess it's the old analogy of trying to eat an elephant a bite at a time. So we're trying to focus on the top 10 and then see if there's areas that we can maybe make some improvements. And to do that, we look at this map and East Central helped put together where the top 10 crash sites are. And we've been doing that. We've been using this source for about 12 years or so. These locations are mapped within 100 feet of an intersection. And like I said, the goal is to analyze some of these and see what can be done. One of the things we did last year is we did that Jackson Street safety study, and then we implemented that in summer of last year. And that resulted, we had speed boards, additional crosswalks, RFBs, we did a road diet. We haven't had a full year yet, so it will be interesting to see how that corridor is improved. I did a quick look at the crashes there, and there were 15 between Murdoch and Jackson Roundabout and Church from August to December. It's not unexpected to have a higher number of crashes there just because it's a major arterial with a high traffic volume, so some crashes are expected. The one concern I noted that I'll have to keep an eye on is that there were 8 rear end crashes that were southbound Jackson prior to the New York intersection. So that was the one red flag that I noticed. 3 of those, there were some contributing factors as far as distracted driving goes. One noted somebody dropped something, took their eyes off the road. One was just looking at their phone. But I guess we'll have to keep an eye on that because that is a possible result of road diets, is it can increase rear end crashes since there's one lane in each direction.
You have a question, Ross?
Yeah.
Yep.
Were any of those rear end collisions caused by a person turning into their driveway and getting rear-ended?
No, not from what I saw.
I mean, I'm more aware of it because we're so close to Bowen Street.
Sure.
We got the blinker on, people are not, they're driving for me too,
Yep.
and near misses.
Yeah. No, I didn't note any of those. It was mostly people that the car in front of them stopped for the light and they weren't paying attention. And the good news with those is those are, in previous years we've had that intersection's been a higher crash intersection, Jackson and New York, and we did the restrict the left turns during rush hour, which helped reduce the number of crashes. The good news is the number of crashes is up, is the bad news, but the good news is those are less severe than a angle crash for a left turn. So we'll continue to analyze that corridor. So that was just some side notes that I noted when we're trying to look at some of the effectiveness of the recent measures. But then getting to the top 10, the roundabouts, generally are the highest crash frequency intersections just due to the traffic volume that they carry. And the ones off the interchanges are the state jurisdiction. And the ones that are not part of the I-41 interchanges, those are under city jurisdiction. But those are relatively new, and it's difficult to make too many changes to those without physically reconstructing something. But we're able to do some of those things, like I mentioned earlier, that helps with the pedestrians and bicycle safety, like with the RFBs we've installed, and then at 9th and Washburn, and then the ones we'll be installing at Kohler and 9th this coming summer. But in addition to that, then the other 2 areas that were in the top 10, which these we can do some things about. So there were West Haven Drive and 9th Avenue came in on the list. And that one is, there were a number of factors that led to those crashes. 4 of them involved left-turning vehicles. 3 of them involved vehicles running the red lights, and the other 2 were side swipe and rear end. Those traffic signals are a temporary installation. They were installed during roundabout construction. However, they proved to be popular, even though they weren't necessarily warranted. So they're still temporary installations on wood poles with overhead lines. So what last few years, we've looked at installing permanent signals, and those need to be budgeted, and it's with the city's capital improvement program. So far, it hasn't been elected for budgeting, but I think this will help move it up the list. If we do install permanent signals, that will allow for vehicle detection, which will help with the signal timing, and that may also improve the safety of the intersection. It would make the signals more prominent because we would have overhead signals, and then we could also look at the need for turn arrows. The other benefit to that would be pedestrian push buttons would be added, which we don't have, and that is a bike and connection for bike routes on West Haven Drive. So some of those things, like vehicles running red lights, it's hard to say whether you can prevent that or not, but if the vehicles are a little more apparent, that would help, obviously. And that's also signifies sometimes that people don't think that it's should be there or that or don't observe it. So by actuating the signals as well, that would keep 9th green unless there's a need for it to change. So that one came up. And then the other one that came up was Washburn and West Town, and that's the intersection in front of the Quick Trip on the west side of town. The majority of those crashes were northbound vehicles on Washburn, turning left onto West Town, and colliding with vehicles that were southbound on Washburn in the curb lane. And from what I looked at, most of those crash reports, those left-turning vehicles that are northbound, so they're turning onto West Town, which is, you're heading towards Menards there. What the majority of them were is that left-turning vehicle thought that the vehicle oncoming was going to turn right and head towards Menards. Also, they were surprised when they continued straight. So that was the majority of the crashes there. And that intersection hasn't raised any concern on previous reports. However, based on that, we did look at it, and fortunately, we do have turn arrows there. They're currently amber flash, but we were able to add a green left arrow phase, so that brings up the green arrow prior. It's a leading arrow, so it brings it up prior to the southbound movement, and that has, so far, we've been out there monitored, and it seems to be working very well. And that should mitigate some of the left turn crashes, as you won't have that conflict anymore. So we were able to do that. So those are the 2 intersections that we were looking at this year. One we've addressed, and the other one we'll look to address through the capital budgeting process this year. So any questions on that report?
Yeah, that West Haven and 9th, that's been a long time since it's, and I can't believe that's still not budgeted.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, so many stuff comes up after that gets through.
Right. Yeah, that's, it's been a conversation we've had every year for the last few years. But I think this now, we have some data that proves it needs to be done, which should help move it up on the list.
Oh yeah, safety is the #1 priority.
Yep. Yeah, and I know my my electric traffic manager has been wanting to do that for, if we're gonna keep it there, which we are, just because it's become so popular. And especially as that west side of the town develops further. So if we're gonna keep it there, we need to do it the right way, in the modern way.
Yeah, I appreciate having it there. I use that intersection frequently. Most of the time I use it, I'm turning north onto West Haven off of 9th.
Oh, okay.
Because if I'm turning, when I'm coming back the other way, then I usually take a left on to Wetzel and go across that way.
Sure.
I mean, it's obviously proved itself to be necessary at that
Yep.
location. I mean, for those that have been around a while, thought of going back to a two-way stop on West Haven is obscene at this point, because you'd never get off of West Haven if you had to go straight across. You might be able to turn, but getting straight across would, well, you might be able to make a right turn, but getting
Yeah,
straight
left
across.
turn, I mean, in years past, it's almost impossible to get, 'cause, there are a lot of people that need to be over there in that area that live on the, further east, it's just a nightmare trying to get back across.
So-
Like I said, that's why I like Witzel, they got because they've had the left turn lane, and then, it's, when going back across the freeway, you got the, only 2 roundabouts compared to 4, and, that's just less traffic to go through,
Mhm.
Now, I'm not trying to avoid a roundabout, it's just common sense, you want to avoid the traffic congestions.
I'm not afraid to say that I avoid 21 when I can and take Witzel. I mean, I would suspect those that are honest with themselves would admit to the same thing. It just makes more sense. Unless you've got somewhere to be, specifically on 21, Witzel's the way to go. All right, so moving on, we then move to staff statements. Mr. Collins.
Yeah, I have some follow-ups from the last meeting. First of all, mention again, we do have an opening on the board for a permanent seat, and then obviously we have openings for alternate seats as well. So if anybody's viewing and is interested, you can contact the mayor or the city manager's office to fill out an application. From the last meeting, the Irving Street Railroad crossing, there was a concern about the maintenance of that crossing, so I did talk to Public Works, and they passed that concern on to the railroad. Obviously, it was earlier in spring, but now they should be able to take a look at it as we're getting into warmer weather. And then Mr. Christensen asked about the intersection of 21 West Haven. That is a state intersection as well. So I did talk to their traffic engineer, and he said they have reviewed that intersection, and based on turning movement counts, they said that intersection, in their opinion, striped correctly, as there are more right-turning vehicles than left-turning vehicles on northbound West Haven, and they have to give priority to one or the other. So at this time, they said that's, in their opinions, the way it should be. And then Mr. Becker asked about Bowen and Merritt. And that was the concern with the vehicle, or with the light not turning. That is one of the older intersections in the city, and it's timed, which means there are times when a red light may stop traffic even if there is no cross traffic. That is on our list, that whenever that area there's construction, or if it's reconstructed, to upgrade the signals there, and then we could look at actuation with cameras or loops, but right now we don't have that.
Just as an offshoot of that, was the gas station queried on their thought on that situation? Because I would imagine there's and again, we obviously have an officer sitting in the room with us, the gas station shortcut that takes place at that light quite frequently would be my guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just looked into to see why it was like it is, but some point we need to upgrade that, but it's going to probably take construction, because even if we added cameras there, we don't have pedestrian push buttons, so that means that you would never get the walk for the pedestrians. And there's
Sure.
not enough room there to put them in, so we'd have to move the right-of-way line a little bit to get something. So it's a little more complex than we would like. And that's what happens with a lot of the older intersections. That's why some of them are still timed.
Merritt's such a narrow street, then you got the conflict on Main with the left turn there. A lot
Yeah.
of people want to turn anyways.
So it is that area of Bowen. I know they're gradually working their way down Bowen, so I don't know when it's scheduled, but it'll get there eventually.
Okay. Which then brings us to future agenda requests. Mr. Christensen.
I do have a couple things. First of all, I have occasion to drive down Wisconsin Street quite often. And the street between New York Avenue and Bent is in a very sad state of repair. And I'm just wondering if there's anything soon going to happen with that, or
Yeah, I know it is in the capital improvement plan. I don't remember which year, but it is in there somewhere in the next 10 years. I know it's not in
Well-
the next couple.
I've got
But-
kind of a small car, and I'm afraid
Yeah, I know,
sometime
it's-
I'm not gonna make it.
I know it definitely is in rough shape. I don't disagree with you.
Very rough shape.
They, I know that's one road that we did look at for the build of bilateral infrastructure, to see if it would be eligible. Unfortunately, it's not eligible, because it has to be, I'm trying to remember what the criteria was, but it isn't a high enough road classification to qualify. But it is on the radar. I'm just not sure where it is.
I brought that up
Yeah, it's,
last year.
Yeah, but it definitely, I agree with you, it's in rough shape.
You're patching patches, and it just, it's bad. The other thing that I was wondering about is, has there ever been any request for one of the flashing crossings on Murdoch? I know that there, a lot of times it's the students that are walking to north from, let's say, they have to cross Murdoch. And there are, I don't know if there are painted crosswalks, I
Yep.
imagine there are. But has there ever been any request for, upgrading that to like what we have on Jackson, which is terrific?
Which,
You talking
which intersection?
Yeah, you talking about Wisconsin and Murdoch?
It would be, no, I'm looking more for, let's say, center of that area, more kind of in the Vinland, Spruce, Walnut, somewhere in that area.
I know the crossing guard, I believe, is at Vinland, if I remember correctly.
Well,
That like Vinwood and
I
Elmwood.
don't think there's a crossing guard. Not for the high school, I don't think they have
I think there is. I'll have to double check, but I think that's where they cross for the school, if I remember correctly. I know that it's been a while. Somebody did ask about that. It's been a few years. I remember there was one request, but it was so close to the roundabout, and
That was Hobbs, yeah.
the guidance is you're not supposed to add a mid-block crossing close to an intersection. So it was too close to the intersection to qualify, because they're supposed to go to the intersection's the safest place to cross, and we do have the flashers there. So if I remember correctly, there's the roundabout, and then I don't know if you know, but I'm pretty sure there's a crossing guard at Vinland.
I don't know where all the crossing guards are. I know we've got a couple of them on Elmwood. There's one at Elmwood in New York, and then there's one further north. I'm not exactly.
Okay.
Well, those were where the grade schools are. I have never seen a crossing guard
Sure.
on Vinland or on Murdoch.
Yeah, I'll have to check. I
Yeah.
thought there was.
'Cause I'm
but-
thinking more of, let's say between Algoma and, let's say, Wisconsin.
Yeah, I'll have to check and see where the crossing is.
I was heading east on Murdoch, and there was a student that obviously must have been late for class or something, just tearing across between, I think it was between Spruce and Walnut.
Okay.
Made the run for it.
Yeah. I'll have to look at that. But I did, I know we are, well, this is the other different school, but it does help North as well. But, we are probably upgrading the flashers on Jackson, but that's the ones up by Oak Lawn. Because if you look, we got the really old ones there. It's just the one flashing lights. We are looking at upgrading those. But that's the only one I can think of in that area currently.
That would be a good idea, too. But the crossing on Jackson at Congress is, I see kids using that, adults, and I guess my thought was, kids were just gonna go by and push the button to make the lights flash, but I haven't noticed that. I think everybody's using it correctly and properly.
Yeah, good.
And one other thing too, this is just a statement, for snow removal on my street, and I live on Jackson Street. It's been a lot less frightening with that buffer zone out there.
Oh,
The only time is when the plow comes through, well, they get right to the
Sure.
edge, but, the traffic stays out there instead of having, traffic this far from you, it's 5 feet from you, which is,
I'll second that.
yeah.
yeah, like I said, Jackson seems to be working pretty well. The only two concerns noted so far are the increase in the rear end crashes, which we need to investigate a little further as we go. And there's nothing you can do about right now because they're doing the construction there. It gets a little messy when they're working on the street, but.
Hey, how in the world can you deal with inattentive driving?
Yeah, I know, and we talk
It's
about
not
that all the
road's
time.
fault.
Yeah, we talk about that all the time. It is probably the number one cause of crashes today.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. But it's a big improvement. It's sane and reasonable, the buffer zone, when you're out there just a shoulder's width from the right lane, and cars weren't moving over or slowing down. Now, the buffer zone is a welcome. I mean, we've been there 55 years, so it's been a nice change.
Anyone else with the
Yeah.
future? Oh,
A
go ahead.
couple items. The first thing is it legal to park in front of the handicapped accessible ramp going, across I'm looking at the 11th and Georgia intersection. It's kind of jogged, Georgia jogs there, so like the would be the northeast corner. The handicapped ramp is a little further in from the street. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all.
No, but it is. I mean, the state law is you can't park within 15 feet of an intersection or of a
Well,
crosswalk. I meant.
People have been parking blocking the handicapped ramp. It's not a problem for me because I can walk around it, but my
Yeah.
next door neighbor uses one of those electric wheelchairs, and I've seen a couple other people in my neighborhood use them too. So they're just kind of, screwed trying to cross there,
Yeah. So it's near the intersection though.
Yeah, it's at the intersection, but like I said, it's jogged over a little bit because the street jogs.
Yeah.
It's like I said, it's the
But if it's still at the intersection, then
yeah, it's for the intersection.
Yeah, it's you're not supposed to park within 15 feet
Yeah, I've never
of a
seen it until
crosswalk.
just recently, and it's happening quite frequently. Because I live a block away, so
Sure.
I'm driving that intersection daily.
Yeah.
And I go walk around the park myself too. But like I said, I can walk around it. But like I said, it's jogged in a little bit from what you would normally think of.
Yeah.
Because usually they're right close to
Right.
the street. But this one's over a little bit. So it's questionable if there's room for a parked car, even if it was legal.
Yeah, they shouldn't be parking. So it's at Georgia and
It's on 11th.
11th.
In Georgia, but it's mainly off of 11th. The house front's on 11th there.
Right.
It's the northeast one, because the one by the park is okay, and then on the other side there is no
Right.
ramp, I think.
maybe you guys can take a look at it. Because if it's
Whenever you see it, just
Yeah.
call into the front desk and ask us to send an officer to see a soda, check it out.
Yeah, like I said, it's been happening pretty frequently lately, and I never, I've lived there since '97. I never saw that happen before. Now it's happening on the regular.
Yeah, they shouldn't be parking there.
Yeah, I didn't think it was. I thought it was fishy that it wouldn't be legal, but I wanted to.
Because even if there's not a marked crosswalk there, if it's at an intersection, it's technically a crosswalk because each
Yeah, you're
intersection is
blocking
considered a
the-
crosswalk. So
Access. And the other one I brought up, since there's going to be construction on Osborne, if we could add a sign with the arrows straight and arrows. There's a right turn arrow painted on the pavement, but you got to get clear up to see it. And
Where
I've
is-
had on Osborne,
Osborne.
over the quarry there. I'm going Osborne going east at Knapp.
Okay.
You don't really need it on Osborne on Knapp the other direction because it's a narrow street, and you've only got basically one place to go there. You want one car decides where they want to go, but on the other you got two lanes on Osborne going east, and I've seen, there's, like I said, there's one painted on a right turn on the pavement, but I've seen people that go up there, and are trying to make a left turn out of the right turn lane. Not very often, but I mean, I've seen it then. So you've got somebody making a left turn out of the right lane, and then, the person in the left straight lane is kind of, I was just thinking, since we're having construction there coming up this year, that maybe add a left straight and a right turn.
The sign, you mean?
Yeah. Because, like I said, when it comes to a question, some people are always going to do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
we can
unless
take a
it's
look at
pointed
that.
out. But, like I said, the biggest concern I have is the safety at that
Yeah, I don't think, I think,
intersection.
well, I know they're talking about, it's basically just gonna be a mill and overlay, but yeah, if they get that funding through the infrastructure bill. But, yeah, we
Yeah,
can
that's
look at
getting
that.
pretty potholed up there. That's been there a while. They put it in just before I moved over there in '97. Because that was the old railroad corridor.
Yeah, we can take a look at that.
You're getting more people living there now. They just built those new apartment units, so you got 2 sets of apartment units.
Right. Okay.
Anyone else with a future agenda request? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move it.
Second.
Call the roll on adjournment, please.
Christensen,
Aye.
Jazinski.
Aye.
Klon
All right.
Staple,
Aye.
Becker.
Aye. We are adjourned.
I want to bring up on